Welcome to Story Studio Network. I'm CEO Erin Trafford, and today we are diving into the incredible world of branded podcasting. And I'm going to explain why your business needs to be paying attention. All right, so in this video and podcast, however you choose to receive this information, we're going to explore a little bit more about how branded podcasting has become an absolute game changer for businesses. I'm going to explain some of the unique advantages that it's offering to the market that other forms of marketing do not. And I'm also going to explain why it's a crucial tool for modern marketing strategies. So make sure that you stick around through this video. And in the end, I will have shared with you lots of tips on how you can get started with your very own branded podcast and some actionable items that you can take away to apply to your business, your marketing, and your new media right now. So first, let's start with a little bit of a history lesson. The historical context of podcasting is a bit hard to unpack because it actually has been around for a very long time, plus or minus 25 years. But it's come a long way since its inception in the early 2000s thereabout. In fact, fun fact, my first ever podcast was in 2006, and it was very hard to podcast back then. Initially, podcasting was just this sort of niche hobby for nerds and tech enthusiasts and bloggers. So when it was first conceived of, podcasting was very much integrated with blogging. And what hasn't changed is that long form approach to podcasting, much like blogging was back in the day. Here's another fun fact. Before I founded Story Studio Network, I used to run a blog network. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If you understand blogging and the power it has, and it certainly had over the last decade, you will understand the power of podcasting. And podcasting takes that marketing juice and the ability to connect to a completely new level. So today's podcasting landscape is mainstream. I mean, really, there's some statistics that show that 80% of North Americans over the age of 18 engage with at least one form of audio on demand once a week. That's pretty significant. As of this moment, there are about 4 million podcasts in the world, 4 to 5 million, depending on who you ask. And of those, about half of them are active. Now, an active podcast is a feed that has been updated within the last 3 months or so. So all this to say, if you're not a numbers person, here's what you need to hear is that in the last 25 years, podcasting has become more powerful for brands, but the market is not fully saturated. So there is tons of opportunity there for you to create compelling content and rise above the fray and the noise in the rest of the social media world. So smart brands 8 to 10 years ago started to understand this, and they started to lean into podcasting as a playground where not a lot of people were playing. And what we have now seen is this body of evidence that continues to grow, where businesses have started to recognize the potential of podcasts as an owned platform for branded content. It's not a social media platform. It is not an earned platform. It is an owned platform. And your brand podcast can truly be that diving board. Like, think of it literally in your mind like a platform. It is the foundation upon which the rest of your brand content, your values, your mission, your connection, your sales, all of that can leap off of. We've seen brands enter the branded podcast space in North America in large numbers in the last 8 to 10 years. Brands like McDonald's, GE, Shopify have successfully launched their own podcasts and have captured, more importantly, the attention of millions of ideal users, clients, and partners. So now let's talk about why branded podcasting is an absolute game changer. What makes it so powerful? Well, really, there are 3 things that contribute to the power of branded podcasts. Number 1 is the engagement. We see time and time again that researchers want us to believe that human beings can only pay attention to something for 3 seconds. And it's just not true. Time spent listening is a major driver of success in the podcast world. Contrary to popular belief, it is not downloads. It's time spent listening. And what we see certainly at Story Studio Network is that our shows that we produce for our clients tend to have an extremely high time spent listening, which means that the people that are finding that show, that are engaging with the audio, are sticking around. In some cases, 80-90% of the show is consumed every single time. There is power in that engagement. There is power in that time spent listening, and that can't be achieved on any other platform. Simply because Instagram isn't built for that. TikTok is not built for that. YouTube arguably is built for that, but it doesn't have the same results. The average time spent listening or watching on YouTube, you're lucky if you get 50%. But in podcasts, you're doing great if you get 80%. It's pretty average. So there's something special about the audio medium that creates this deep engagement that brands can truly leverage. The next thing is the storytelling power. So yes, you can tell stories through captions on social and through clips on social media. Those are great. And I'm not suggesting you stop doing that if you are doing that. But what we have learned over and over again about the power of audio is that the storytelling takes on a new meaning. And when it takes on a new meaning, it takes on a new value for the brand. Your ability to go long, to go deep, to go episodic, to serialize the story of your brand or the values you want to stand next to is bar none best done on a podcast. And smart brands are doing that. Some of them are producing narrative style documentaries to showcase what their brand believes in, to stand beside stories that grip listeners week after week, day after day, month after month. It's different than social media. The next superpower is the fact that podcasts are super flexible and therefore can be really creative. Now, this can also be a drawback because, as we know, something that's for everybody is for no one. So one of the challenges you have as a brand entering the podcast space, and it's something that Story Studio Network excels in helping you with, is really honing in what you need that podcast to do. Because if you wanted to do everything, it won't do everything well. So with that flexibility comes some need to commit to what the goal is. But all that being said, your podcast can be a narrative. Your podcast can be an interview show. It can be a roundtable style show. It can be a solo thought leadership show. It can have video. It can have clips. It can be in the field. It can be in your bedroom closet. I know lots of creators who still do that, or in their laundry room to get some sound deadening. You can be so creative with a podcast that sometimes that can be overwhelming. So it is a double-edged sword, but I would like to say that it's more of a superpower than anything. So all this, I want to pull this all together, is that when we look at the way the podcast landscape has developed, when we look at the superpowers that podcasting has for your brand, it brings up some really unique advantages in terms of marketing and long-term relationship building with clients, customers, and the overall market. Number one is that authenticity. Okay. When you hear someone's voice, when you see their face, when you can feel what they are saying, and that is in direct relation or adjacent to your brand, your authenticity goes through the roof. And authenticity is currency, just like attention is currency. When those two things come together, attention and authenticity, you will see a tick up in revenue. Absolutely you will. Podcasting is more authentic than almost any other kind of social media out there. And the types of listeners it attracts are the ones who become champions for you and your brand. The other thing that we're seeing right now that's developing, as we speak, almost in real time, is that the targeting with podcasting is getting better and better and better. You don't actually want a show that's for everyone. You want a show that is for a very specific type of audience. And now with the technology that we're seeing be developed, podcasts can do that. They're like the laser instead of the buckshot to the marketing. And I have to say this too, is that with costs across the board for business owners rising, I feel like they've been rising for years and years, is that podcasting is still a relatively cost-effective way to build that foundational marketing for your brand. It's bar none, less expensive than video production. It just is. Can it go hand in hand with video production? Absolutely. It is also a different kind of burn than committing to social media. I often refer to social media as that hungry, hungry beast who just needs to be fed all the time. And the minute you stop feeding that beast, he kind of turns on you and you got to work uphill again once you go back to it. With podcasting, yes, there is an investment of time, energy, and money upfront. There absolutely is, and I won't tell you otherwise. But what you have at the end is an asset that can be leveraged over time, and eventually the cost and the investment diminishes over time. You get more return on your podcast than on any other kind of social media marketing. It's an evergreen asset. One of the goals we have at Story Studio is to work with brands to create a podcast that will be just as valuable 2 years from now as it is today. If we do that, we have achieved at least one of our goals. So in terms of cost effectiveness, podcasts are head and shoulders above because it's an initial investment that will give you a return on that asset down the line. So all of this to say, thank you for tuning into our YouTube channel. I would love if you subscribe to our channel. If you leave me a comment, that would be wonderful. We are always looking for feedback at Story Studio Network. And if you want to understand more about the branded podcast landscape, then check out the comments and the description boxes below or the captions wherever you're watching this, where we've provided some ways that you can get in touch with us at Story Studio Network. We'd be happy to pass on some resources or to have a conversation with you about potentially launching a branded podcast. Once again, I'm Erin Trafford. This is Story Studio Network. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.